Hi everyone, Gigabeef here. Today I want to address one of the more difficult tasks for beginners, which is determining whether a person is an AI Scav, a player Scav, or a PMC. I see this question crop up all the time, so I wanted to give you a head start on being able to quickly identify your opponents. There are a few key ways to quickly identify AI Scavs, as they act differently to normal players. Number one is movement, so how they walk, they turn, how they move when they're shot at, or at sounds of gunfire nearby. Number two is audio cues such as the SCAV shouts.
Вон он, сука!
Number three is clothing, and generally the way that SCAVs look in the game. Here a SCAV helps us out and gives us a little twirl. And last but not least at number four, knowledge of where SCAVs spawn on the map. Let's begin with movement. SCAVs start to spawn from the beginning of the game, appearing in waves as the timer progresses. Often the map will be quite empty in the first minute or two, with SCAVs starting to appear shortly afterwards and even in areas that were clear previously. They start to patrol around their given areas, typically moving in straight lines and suddenly stopping to check their surroundings. This typical SCAV behaviour becomes rather obvious with a bit of practice. The best way to observe this is to follow around some SCAVs when playing as one, as they won't be hostile, or watching SCAVs onwards at the SCAV house through a scope as they meander about. One point to note, SCAVs that are not aggressive walk at slower than max player movement speed, which is another slightly more subtle sign of SCAV behaviour when you're looking at them from afar. Once spooked by gunfire, SCAVs tend to do a few things, normally turning and running for cover.
Подос вам тут всем, залетные.
Or sometimes they lock on and start strafing.
Ты куда пошел?
Their running is harder to tell and looks similar to a lot of player responses, but when they lock on they crab around like no player would in reality, and it's really obvious. Check out this clip here. I'm 99% certain this is a player Scav trying to act like an AI. Unfortunately, they aren't smooth enough in their movement and are walking at max movement speed, which as we discussed gives it away. See how he keeps stopping? AI Scavs just don't move like this. We get one final glimpse of him through the ladder, acting suspicious. AI Scavs also never jump, and they never loot, so if you see this kind of behaviour, you know you're dealing with a real person. Before we go on, as always I hate to ask, but please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video so far. Thanks to everyone who has subbed, it really means an enormous amount to a new channel like mine when trying to get started. Alright, let's get back to it. A good crossover between movement and audio as we move through our discussion is one idling mechanic that is very telltale that Scavs do, which is the stationary crouch and turn. This creates a distinct foot crunch sound, and often they turn through a full 180, which is relatively hard to replicate smoothly, even if you're trying to trick someone into thinking you're an AI Scav when you're playing Scav. Moving into talking about audio specifically, there are certain Scav voice lines that are aggressive, and others that are just random and passive. With zero working knowledge of Russian, you still get used to which ones are which, and watch out when you hear them.
Ха, ну чё, нормально? Понятно. Понял всё.
The aggressive lines typically mean that they have spotted a player and on the hunt to kill, whether that be you or if it's a decent distance away, another PMC or an aggroed player Scav.
Да вот он! Давай, мочи их! Ты батон в будку закидывай!
And for an all-time Scav favourite,
Вон он, сука!
SCAV lines are different to PMC lines, and few player SCAVs use the voice mumble, so 99% of the time a SCAV voice line means an AI SCAV. As a general rule, getting shot at with no shouts is a good chance that it is not an AI. Could be a real player, as a SCAV or a PMC. Clothing is another giveaway for SCAV identification. Firstly, they tend to wear scruffy trousers unlike PMCs, and can usually be spotted with no helmets, but items on like caps etc. When they've got helmets on, they're slightly more tricky, but normally you'll get used to spotting the SCAV vest and SCAV clothing on underneath. It's also worthwhile getting used to the PMC models for both USEC and Bear, who have logos on their arms. SCAVs don't have these, so if you spot any of them, it's definitely not a SCAV. Finally, simple map knowledge of where SCAVs spawn will often give you a good idea of whether a SCAV spawn is even possible in that area. They're typically quite static, and you should look for groups of up to 3 spawning together in most places. Usually if there is 1, there's normally 2 more. One final point that's worth mentioning. It's not possible to know if you were killed by a player SCAV or an AI SCAV on the death screen alone, but if you have killed a SCAV, you can check if they were a player by the existence of a greyed out secure container where it should be if they were a PMC. AI SCAVs don't even have this slot present on their body, so you can tell whether you've killed a player or an AI. Hopefully this has given you the tips that you need to rapidly identify SCAVs in your raids. Don't worry, it does come easily with practice, it just takes a little time and enough experience with the game to get used to it. That's all for today, so have fun in your raids, good luck out there, and we'll see you next time.